Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. I know a lot of us are missing, but we will still go ahead and discuss the topics of our panel. I request those who are sitting in the back come forward so that we are an August company this morning, and it is my privilege and pleasure to open this panel discussion with just a few thoughts. As you all know, CAISS celebrates its 50th year, 25-26, and putting together this panel discussion is so that we take stock of what CAISS has been over the last 50 years and what we can be in the next 50 years. I mean, we are grateful to all our fellow Anglo-Indians across the diaspora for all that they do to assist in whichever way they can the community here in Kolkata. When we discuss today, we discuss our community and we need to find solutions. We can keep discussing problems, we will only get excuses. But if we discuss solutions, we probably will find a path forward. For information, this is being live streamed, so I bring it to the knowledge of all the speakers that there is a live stream happening. So without any further delays, we've already crossed 15 minutes. We miss Gordon Maha, who was to moderate this discussion, but we very willingly have somebody who will moderate this discussion for us. Professor Mrityunjoy Mohanty. I know he's known to many of you, and he takes a special place for us at CAISS because he's one person who, with his wife Dolores, has visited us every occasion he has been here in Calcutta, and he discusses situations, problems, and what needs to be done. And that is the concern that we have today. Professor, we are very, very grateful to both you and Dolores for all that you do for CAISS. We have another person here who's actually going to initiate this debate today, and that is, very gleefully I will do it, Father Dr. Devraj Fernandez. We need to put our hands together for him because he's also somebody who's very aware of all that happens. Even though he stays in the background, he knows and he himself walks an extra mile very quietly, very willingly. And that's why we have Father Devraj with us today. And I've asked him to introduce the biblical concept of Am I my brother's keeper? I know Am I my brother's keeper is, as I said in inverted commas, something that the Anglo Indian community keeps on the back burner. Yet, there are many instances in which we as a community do things for those who need us at times of difficulty. And gratefully, especially here in Calcutta, many of our community are assisted and have changed for the better. And therefore, many of you sitting in this room, from our ex-MLA, our ex-MP, many of you are benefactors of CAISS, can be assured that every penny that you have put into this has gone to change a life. And if at 50 years we stop and retake and rethink, reallocate, and readjust, it's just that we want to be more effective. There are many of us doing the same thing, but we do not seem to be running on the same lines. So today we're just taking an opportunity to redefine our lines, to see how we can work with everybody around us to make a difference. So I will request Father Devraj Fernandez, Principal of the St. Mary's School here on Ripon Street. I know he needs no introduction to all of you. A very new doctor in English, and I will leave it to him to introduce today's topic, Am I my brother's keeper?
Thank you very much for this warm welcome, words of appreciation and gratitude. I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity, and a very good morning to all of you. I'd like to begin with my favorite author, since he has introduced me as a Reverend Doctor. I've just completed my defense in November, so I want to begin with my favorite writer, C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. It is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit." The quote comes from a sermon Lewis preached at St. Mary the Virgin, Oxford, in 1941, and was later published in his essay in his book, The Weight of Glory. He reminds us that every person we meet, the neighbor on Elliott Road, the elderly auntie in the nursing home, the child struggling in the school, carries an eternal weight of glory. Yet, when we look at the very beginning of our scriptures, we see a man who tried to deny this value. In Genesis 4:9, Cain stands before God and asks this chilling question, Am I my brother's keeper? There was a term we used when we were growing up, my brother's keeper. It's been a while since we were little kids, yet I remember what we meant by the term back in the old days. Thinking about this term now makes me wonder, what does being my brother's keeper look like today in our 21st century society? Has this Bible verse meaning changed, or has how we apply the meaning changed? Let's consider these questions and more as we look at this story in Scripture. We are all very familiar. Where is this quote taken from? Genesis chapter 4, verse 9. And we are well aware of the story. The story of Cain and Abel. Abel brought the very best of his livestock as an offering to God. On the other hand, Cain chose some vegetables from his harvest to bring as an offering. God accepted Abel's offering and rejected Cain's. And in his anger, Cain killed his brother. After killing his brother, God stepped in and began a conversation with Cain. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" And he said, "For the first murderer is also a first liar. He says, 'I know not.'" And he added, "For the first murderer." Let us look at the other translation he just took. We have the NLT version that says, "I don't know." Cain responded, "Am I my brother's guardian?" The message is in the Message translation. He said, "How should I know? Am I his babysitter?" The Living Bible translation says, "How should I know?" Cain retorted, "Am I supposed to keep track of him wherever he goes?" The ERV version says, Cain answered, "I don't know. Is it my job to watch over my brother?" Clearly, Cain wasn't the type of older brother we should have been for Abel. What does the Bible say about brotherhood? Let us go a little forward and turn the pages of the Bible. What does it mean, my brother's keeper? The Bible has a lot to say about this, and we have a lot of references which I would like to place before you. Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. 1 John chapter 4, 20-21. This is how we know that love is. Jesus Christ lays down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. 1 John 3:16. There are so many verses in the Bible about loving each other, caring for each other, looking out for others' interests, far too many to fit into this speech. Jesus summed it up best in Mark 12:31 when he said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." And this is the heart and crux of the matter. In fact, Jesus said in John 13:35 that the identifying mark for everyone who is my disciple will be the way we love one another. Let us go back to our original text, Genesis, and the lesson it teaches is obviously the sin of social irresponsibility. We may conveniently approach the subject from the positive aspect, responsibility, and the duties which it involves. So, the first and foremost, the responsibility of every man for his brother. The responsibility of man for man. God questions. The Lord said unto Cain, "Where is Abel thy brother?" This was not God's first question. He asked the same question to Adam when he realized that he was naked before God. "Where art thou?" So this is God's second question. Where is your brother? And just as the first question was addressed to man upon his first conviction of sin, so the second question is addressed to man after his first struggle with his fellow man. It is asked of the victor concerning the vanquished in the cruel competition of life, "Where is your brother?" We are all concerned in this question. Let us take it as addressed to ourselves individually. First of all, we may consider the question so far as it relates to all those who are near and dear to us, all those whose names and faces are familiar to us, all those who are connected with us by the bonds of kindred or affection, parents, wife, husband, children, all that inner circle of friends and relations, all whom we acknowledge to have been, in some sense or other, committed by God to our safe keeping and care. The family is our ideal of all love and service. Almost all our thoughts of affection and union begin and associate themselves with the family, the home, the hearth, the family, the altar, the nursery, the early childhood, etc. The family is the cradle of love. But when we speak about responsibility, however, it reaches further out than this. Responsibility rests upon us in some way or other with regard to everyone with whom we have brought into contact, the friends, the acquaintances of our life, all those with whom we have business relations, the various members, that circle of society in which we move, our more casual friends, the fellow travelers whom we meet on our journeys, there is a responsibility resting upon us with regard to them all. Where is your brother? Where is he, morally and spiritually, so far as the influence, however slight it may have been, which I have exercised over him goes, where is your brother? The question is very searching one. What was Cain's answer? I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? The first part of Cain's answer, I know not, was a lie, as most selfish answers are. And behind the lie was the sin of irresponsibility. And do we not continually betake ourselves to these refuges of lies in the bitter hour of remorse, in the dreary consciousness of a self degrading fault? I am not responsible. This tendency to evil, intemperance, gambling, impurity, and the burden of heredity, I might as well blame myself for everything that is negative. I am not responsible. And all the while, we are proving the falseness of this excuse we urge. Why the need to urge an excuse if indeed we are not responsible? This plea of necessity is but a refuge of lies, which the guilty fly, for conscience does make cowards of us all. The second part of Cain's answer, am I my brother's keeper, was an insult. To what a shameful pitch of presumptuous insolence had Cain arrived when he could thus insult the Lord God. Cain, however, was conscious that God was speaking to him. He heard him say, where is Abel, thy brother? And yet he dared, with the coolest impertinence, to reply to God, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? As much as to say, do you think that I have to keep him as he keeps his sheep, as I a shepherd as he was? And am I to take as much care of him as he did of a lame lamb? The cool insolence of Cain is an indication of the state of heart which led up to his murdering his brother. Having committed murder, the hardening influence of sin upon Cain's mind must have been intense. And so at last he was able to speak out to God's face what he felt within his heart and to say, am I my brother's keeper? Thus, first with a lie and then with an insult, Cain replies to God's question. But the question is not a negative one, and it cannot be answered negatively. Men often urge the innocence of their conduct. They say they're sure that they have never done anyone any harm. The excuse is a salve to the conscience of careless people who are using their lives here for mere pleasure and frivolity. Almost all such persons will tell you that they are doing no harm. And this is not to be wondered at, because everyone who does what is foolish and short sighted must have some way of justifying himself. Otherwise, he would hardly act in a foolish and short sighted way. And this plea that he is doing no one any harm is the simplest and the most plausible that can be set up. Look closely at the notion of doing no one any harm and see what it is worth. How far will it be? Will it bear examination? It is not really a repetition of old excuse of Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? If we spend all our time taking the weeds out of our garden, we shall certainly not gather any flowers. So, if we never get beyond the principle of doing no harm to our neighbor, it is just as certain that we shall do him no good. The question is a positive one. And in some way or other, each man's conscience knows best how. God expects from each one of us the positive answer: I am my brother's keeper. Cain lives today, and the blood of Abel still cries to God. And there is the Cain spirit in every man who does not accept his responsibility for his brother, living it out honestly and earnestly in everything through the whole 7 days of the week. There are dead men and women and children crying with awful cry. How these cries go up to God. For every man, therefore, the question is, what is the best thing that I can do? Whether in our city, in our country, I, in my little sphere, with my limited ability, have my life to live. And how am I to answer God's question? The one thoroughly good thing we can do is to know that the Lord Jesus Christ, to call him Lord, and then looking into his face to say, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? If everyone who professes to care about the poor would make himself the friend of one poor person, there would soon be no insoluble problem of the masses. Would be within measurable distance of becoming a city of happy homes. My dear friends, as we leave this gathering today, let us not wait for a feeling of charity or a burst of emotion. Let us take the advice of C.S. Lewis. I want to end with the words of C.S. Lewis, who told us not to waste time wondering if we love our neighbor, but simply to act as if we did. When we provide that meal, when we support that student, when we visit that lonely home in our city, the love follows the action. In doing the work of a keeper, we become a community. So let us go forth today, not just as members of a society, but as a family that acts, as a community that keeps, and as a people who love one another in deed and in truth. Am I my brother's keeper? In this city and for this community, our answer remains a resounding yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Devraj. Thank you, Father Devraj, for initiating this discussion. I know that's a very heavy dose early in the morning, but it will lighten up because we discuss the more practicals of it. And I hand over to Professor Mohanty to take it forward from here. He is, of course, a professor. He was, of course, a professor, now retired from IIM Kolkata. So we are in safe hands.
Thank you, Colin, for the very kind words of introduction. And thank you, Reverend, for an excellent introduction. The words of C.S. Lewis, with which you ended, really are the way we go forward. Just very quickly, before I assume my role of the moderator, to introduce myself. I am Dolores Chu's husband, first, professor next. And I'm saying this because Dolores is an old Calcutta girl. She was born on Chota Elliott Road, lived on Chota Elliott Road for many years until she left for Canada. And it's one of those things that she married a Calcutta boy. Her first marriage was to somebody who lived on Chota Elliott Road, but they didn't know each other when they did. When she married the Calcutta boy in Montreal, it also meant that it reinforced her ties with Kolkata. So as the years passed, she visited almost every year. And then she goes and makes another mistake after she breaks up with the Calcutta boy to marry another Calcutta resident who's not a Calcutta boy. But our long years have been here, and in these years, her association with CAISS has been a very important pillar for her. It's with these words that I begin this panel discussion. Remember, the role of the moderator is very simple, which is to act as a timekeeper. And as Colin said, as a teacher, the first thing that you are taught, you stick to the allotted time you have. So that lesson of sticking to the allotted time is what I will bring to this. And particularly because we are running a little late, every speaker will have 15 minutes. From when 2 minutes remain, I'll waive this. And when that 2 minutes are over, I'll come and switch this off. So, switching it off is what I've learned is the modern way of doing it, right? They take away the mic. I can't take the mic with there off, right? So, without further ado, may I now begin this morning's panel? Am I my brother's keeper? So the first topic has been introduced by Colin, so we will not go there. We'll begin with the second. How should we understand, am I my brother's keeper in today's world as Anglo-Indians? And this will be introduced by Robin Andrews. Robin's association with Anglo-Indian community is again of very long standing. And she, along with Bren, are the editors of the Journal of Anglo-Indian Studies, which again is among the ways in which the Anglo-Indian community has gone forward in remembering itself, thinking about itself, and encouraging all of us to think about our association as a community. So, without further ado, Robin.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody who is here this morning. Now, slight technical. I'm an academic, so I have a PowerPoint, of course. So we're just trying to get that up. I did load it earlier. I hope you're not starting to tone by now. Okay, perhaps I will start, and then I can just say to Colin, coming along, I can move things along. So in this presentation, I'm going to share some research that I carried out in relation to CAISS's services with a particular emphasis on the youth. Now, this is sort of picking up where Father Devraj talked about, how we apply this, how we apply, are we my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's or sister's keeper? And I'm looking at what CAISS does to make some comments on that. Great, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as I said, I carried out some formal research just before the pandemic, but I've also worked with the community here and been very close to this organisation, particularly through the late Philomena Eaton for over 20 years. So I also call upon that experience. Over the decades, I've spent time with CAISS members as they've distributed rations and pensions to the elderly. I've been to their picnics, Christmas trees and dances, sat with CAISS's education panel as they've interviewed students and parents about individual students' educational progress and any assistance they may need. For the research project, which was actually with Dolores and Brent, I was part of a team of the three of us, all independent researchers. My role was to carry out in-person interviews with beneficiaries, both small group and one-on-one interviews. The interviewees included college students who were in receipt of educational aid from CAISS, and it's mostly from this cohort that I present on today. A trend in the interviews, and something I've always been particularly struck by, is that interactions between CAISS and any of their beneficiaries, including their youth, goes far beyond a mere giving and receiving of financial aid or rations. There's a much more full person, holistic care and evidence. So relationships are formed, people get to know each other. The givers and receivers become well known to each other. This is relevant to the presentation today, where I look at the significance of CAISS's work in terms of the focus of today's event, that of Am I My Brother's Keeper? This idea has and will be variously described and discussed this morning, and my take, maybe a light just on me, thank you, thank you. My take on being my brothers or sisters, of course, keeper, is to feel and act on a sense of responsibility, moral responsibility, to care for, protect, and look out for the welfare of others, not just family members, but the wider community. And I'll argue that the first place we see this emphasis is in CAISS's history and constitution. As we know, CAISS was established in 1976. It has a long history and sound reputation of humanity and integrity. So much so that a number of overseas organisations and individuals have chosen to work exclusively through them to distribute their donations to Anglo-Indians. So the Society states that its prime objects for which the Society is established are these. Now, I'm focusing particularly on, well, first, to some extent, to endeavour to satisfy the educational, social, cultural and material needs of the Anglo-Indian community, but in relation to the youth, particularly to prepare the youth of the community to take an active and constructive role in the affairs of the community and the country. So its aims clearly are more than just community-centric. It also proposes to prepare the community, particularly the youth, to be proud and engaged members of the nation. I turn now to my research, looking particularly at the assistance and services that CAISS offers the youth of the community. In my interviews, I began by asking people how they came to know about CAISS. Earlier in my research with the community, I presumed that everyone in Kolkata knew about them. And while many do, they don't all. This comment from a student and her mother who had been receiving additional educational assistance for close to 10 years indicates how some learn about them. Thank you. So the student said, basically, we didn't find CAISS, but CAISS found us. You know, Mum reiterated, yes, CAISS found us. And I asked, how did that happen? The student said, I think through my school, because I'm Anglo-Indian. The student's mother said, yeah, it was through your school. Then they came to the house and they saw how we were living. She explained that CAISS had assessed and screened them, as they do all potential beneficiaries, to ensure that they are a genuine case, both in terms of needing assistance and of being Anglo-Indian. Because of the poverty of their situation, they were offered assistance, which they continued receiving. I invited interviewees to tell me what educational assistance is provided to them. and this was one response. Yes, thank you. Basically, education support and family support too. And I asked in what way? Educational support for fees, and they said, oh, fees and the toiletries and everything we need in school. And family support too. We get like a ration. Every month we get a ration and we get a small payment too. So the priority placed on education is clear. In the past, the community has been criticised, I mean, some decades ago now, but for not attending to the education of their children. This has always seemed paradoxical to me, given the number of elite Anglo-Indian schools in Calcutta alone, and the number of Anglo-Indians working in education as teachers, headmasters, assistants, administrative assistants, on the boards, and even as owners of schools. At the time of the research, payment for fees was often made by reimbursement, and that was arranged through attending the monthly education panel or social welfare panel. These sessions are were at that stage held in the CAISS offices in the night shelter. To do this, every first or third Sunday throughout the year, 2 or more members of the education committee would sit for most of the day interviewing students of all ages, from KG right through to college, often accompanied by their parents. This was often the place where reimbursement expenses were made. Since COVID, I understand the timing of these sessions have changed, and some of the reimbursement, the ways that they do that have also changed. But the positive impact continues, the work they're doing continues, just managed slightly differently. The other activity that occurs at these one-on-one meetings is that committee members chat to the students, who I was told can be shy and somewhat monosyllabic. Often they were teenagers, we know about that. And his brother, who was part of the interview, said, but you still have another 2 years. And his brother, who was part of the interview, said, but you still have another 2 years to go. And the first one said, don't worry, I won't leave college that fast, I will finish. His brother again said, but life is very uncertain, that's what I will say. It turns out both brothers finished college degrees. I've seen this encouragement by CAISS officers happen in the sessions I've sat in too. The educational panel members talk to the students as a concerned older cousin or an uncle or an aunt might, as someone who has their best interests at heart and who really wants to see them do well and will take pride in what they achieve. This doesn't mean they won't be tough either, just as a family member would be. For example, they don't accept weak responses to challenges about poor academic work. This affectionate attitude towards the students results in students feeling accountable to more than just themselves and their family, but to their CAISS family as well. CAISS offers other incentives to do well in their studies too. I heard about awards that they offer top students. Okay. And one of them said, yeah, I appreciate them. Like when they have these awards, they give to children for their education, which I think is a great way of helping and encouraging children to do better. When you see other children getting that boost, yeah, so that's good. There was no ambivalence to the responses beneficiaries gave about what would have happened without CAISS to assist them with the schooling. So remember, these are students who, without this support, financial and other support, they would not have had a show of going to college. They wouldn't have had the financial means. They would not have had people behind them, keeping an eye on them, making them accountable, pushing them. The one college student said, if I didn't get help, if I wouldn't be getting help from CAISS, I don't think I would have managed this far. Like finishing my entire schooling, I don't think my family would have managed that. The school fees together and the hostel fees and then the toiletries and everything else would be a big expense. So we couldn't have managed if CAISS wouldn't have helped us. And another said, if they hadn't been able to help, I asked, if they hadn't been able to help, what would have happened? And they said, I think I would have gone through a very hard time and I won't do my class 11 year. I think because of CAISS, right now I did my class 11 and now I'm going to go do my postgraduate. So I appreciate all that they've done for me. As well as the direct contributions to education of children and youth through financial assistance, awards and encouragement, CAISS also provides other avenues for youth to develop as engaged citizens. I heard about activities such as summer camps, and there's a very strong and active youth group. Was at the time of the research, still is, probably stronger now. I see from the current website that the fourth Sunday afternoon of each month is when they meet up for activities, and they tell me how much they enjoy meeting up to see each other, just catch up with each other. As well as hearing from interviewees, I see from Reach Out, CAISS's regular publication, that the summer camp includes sessions on career advice and preparation for employment, for example, on CV writing and interview training. So going back to the topic of this panel discussion and my starting point, as I said, my take on being my brother's or sister's keeper is to feel and act on a sense of responsibility, moral responsibility that is, to care for, protect and look out for the welfare of others, not just family members but fellow community members. Based on my interviews and observations over many years, it's clear that youth involved with CAISS feel cared for and attached to CAISS. All of this will enable them to feel more confident about their place in society. This is realised in part through the provision of finances to become educated, but also in life skills and the development of a sense of self-worth that CAISS fosters in its youth. One thing I've noticed is how many are involved in the running of events and the support of running of events. I saw this in the Christmas tree just before Christmas this year, and they've been very present and busy and super helpful at this Jubilee. So I thank them, those who are here at the moment. And I note it. I know from all the time I spent with Philomena that it was a fervent wish of hers, not just to see youth educated through CAISS, that was a fervent wish, but also to see them giving back to CAISS. That is, for them to start taking on the mantle of being their brothers and sisters' keeper. I think she'll be very happy with what she sees today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you for actually being ahead of time that you allotted for you. In my hurry to get it started, I forgot to introduce Robin. Robin holds a PhD from Massey University in New Zealand, where she's currently a research fellow and associate professor in social anthropology. Her PhD thesis in 2005 was in Calcutta's Anglo-Indian community. The rest is her engagement she's spoken about herself. Now, may I request Dr. Charles Dias to come forward and speak on the third topic, which is reluctance to take responsibility of caring for each other. Dr. Dias, of course, needs no introduction to this community. He is one of the community's pillars. Former Member of Parliament, currently President of the Federation of Anglo-Indian Associations in India, President of the Anglo-Indian Education and Charitable Society of Kerala, and President of Church History Association of India. Dr. Dias, the floor is yours. I'll give you 13 and 2.
Our moderator, Professor Mohandi, dear father, my friend Colin, who is the present moderator, Mr. Shane Calvert, former MLA and Vice Chairman of the State Minority Commission in Bengal. Most of your familiar faces. While CAISS celebrates its 50th year, I remember Ms. Philomena Eaton of happy memory. Now Colin has taken over. In this particular subject, am I my brother's keeper, is quite relevant now, especially in a situation the community is in a crossroad. I am making some bullet points, not making an elaborate speech. What is the present situation? There are Anglo-Indians living in poor living conditions. And that is the question where comes. And what is the educational status of the community? Of course, there is a finding of the Minority Commission of Government of India in 2013. It's a document with the Government of India. And what is the economical status of the community? Of course, there are well-off people, very few, middle class, and who are living in poor conditions. And now the question again comes, am I my brother's keeper? I will tell you one thing, Anglo-Indians donated their land, especially during the time when they were leaving India. When I had been to Bangalore, Bombay, Calcutta, and many places where Anglo-Indians are living in group, in clustered houses. Palatial houses are still there, disowned. The property rights are not clear. No owners, nobody's land. Who is taking care of that? Bangalore, we had a very bitter experience. We were searching for a room for our office. They are not prepared to give. The church has got lots of land given by Anglo-Indians, not sharing with us. They gave their money, rose, built schools and churches. See, recently in 2024, when we visited Chandigarh, one Mr. Howard Carver, he built and gave a church worth 30 crores. Can you imagine? 2 schools he is managing. He is not married, his relatives are abroad. 30 crores. When Colin put forward this question, am I my brother's keeper? This 30 crore church, I won't say that there is no need of the church there. Maybe his wish and gratitude for the blessings he received. That's a different question. But can we afford to give money like that? Whereas our poor brethren are still in the gullies of Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai, and many other places. Then, where are we now? How many are in India? And what is the situation of the Anglo-Indian schools? Big buildings. In Lucknow, we know that, I think Innis, Cedric Innis School. So many schools. And who is the owner of the school? The one school in Calcutta, where in 2013, when we came for the reunion, what is the sister's name? That sister who is managing the school? Sister Moresa. Even we all visited that place. See, we are happy that she could build that school. But whether the community is taken care of, that's the question. Now when we go in my own state, where Anglo-Indians built the church, where Anglo-Indians built the schools, they are denied admission. They are denied appointments. What we can do? This is given to the church. My own parish, the old building in front of the High Court of Kerala, where we assembled together, we donated the land, we built the church. Now we have been pushed out. You have no further say. When you donate to the church, sorry Father, but I have to tell the truth. When we donate our building or money and sources to the church, the next day maybe the same parish priest is there. He will mind us, consider us. The next parish priest comes, Father, I donated these buildings. Call him. Oh, I don't know you. It's gone. So that is the situation. Why our Anglo-Indians are not knowing the realities? How many are abroad? I think they consider India still, as long as they live, they used to come to India, take part in reunions, take part in our events. After what? Their children are either Australians or US citizens, Canadians, no more. So many years. Even for the next reunion, even our president has his own apprehension how to conduct it. So that is the situation. That's what I'm telling you, the realities. Then what can we do? As Colin has rightly put it, his question is the community across generations, how do we bridge it? So that is the relevance of this particular session. How we are going to bridge it. My suggestion towards this August forum is, August body is, to form a forum of Anglo-Indians who live in India and abroad, to help the poor, to channelize. Now we are getting funds because of their generosity. Many other institutions get. To promote education, second thing, help the poor, to promote education, find out responsible youth. I am putting forward 3 points towards this seminar. Help the poor, promote education, find out responsible youth. For the society, Kerala Anglo-Indian Educational Charitable Society, Blair Williams donated 20 lakhs as first installment. Poor fellow died before his second installment was given to us. We have not part with single rupee. We have deposited, now it is more than a crore for individuals like us. We use only the interest. Every year we require 12 lakhs. We get interest only for 7.5 lakhs. We raise it every next February is our scholarship distribution. You have to find out 12 lakhs. That 4 lakhs you have to find out. So that much applications we get. And we don't give scholarships to undergraduates and other courses. We give our scholarships to PG students, professional college students and other courses. Still we have this year we got 220 applications. So this is the situation. And find out responsible youth to whom we hand over this baton. Now Colin is here, many others are here. Where is the second line? That's a big question. We have to find out deliberately, purposely, with a crash program. Find out responsible youth. Bring them to the forum. Train them and hand over. Otherwise, there will not be Anglo-Indians. Only in the surnames they will have. So that point, these 3 points I have put forward to you. The fourth thing is to establish a headquarters. Now we don't have a place, we have got several associations. One minister told me once, I think Colin was there are more associations than Anglo-Indians here. So many associations. They cannot come and work each other. When we formed the federation, 17 organizations, now it has gone up to 19 and maybe 21. With the unregistered 2-3 forums and associations. 21 or maybe 20. But out of the 20, how many are functioning well? That's still a question that we have to discuss in our committee. But still I am telling you, we should have a forum. An international forum of resourceful Anglo-Indians and the office bearers of the Anglo-Indian organizations functioning here. Find out a place. We gave a memorandum to the government of Karnataka for a cultural center to allocate land. When it came to the decision time, unfortunately the MLA was changed. The present MLA got it. But we cannot enter. Even though we gave the memorandum, it went to some other organization. Now we should have a place, forum, where we all can come together yearly or whenever we want. We can build rooms there. Whenever you visit India, you have a right and place to stay. My suggestion is, we have a suggestion for a place, but that's yet to decide. It's not my decision. We have to decide where to find out. Now we can. We have the resources. We have the people. After 10 years, I doubt. So if the younger generation or young people or younger than us, when they come and visit India or even from the other parts of India, when they come to this place and discuss, it must be at least yearly or in 6 months, we have to meet and discuss what is the situation. When I became a member of parliament, the government asked one question. The Ministry of Minority Affairs, what is the community demand? I said, if I say that I have got my own demands, my own governments, but I called all the nominated MLAs, ex-MLAs and leaders. That's why I came to know about Colin and CAISS. We met in Delhi and discussed. Then we met the minister, said, these are our demands, 1, 2, 3. That time the All India Anglo-Indian president was there. Many others were there. We met the Minister for Minority Affairs. Then we said, these are our demands. Then, in the Ministry of Minority Affairs, no one was there. Anglo-Indians is one of the minorities. But now there is a nodal officer in the Ministry of Minority Affairs to take care of Anglo-Indians. Whatever memorandum you give, or whatever demands we put forward before the government of India, that nodal officer has to see. You can approach that nodal officer from Anglo-Indians, even in the website you can see. There's a nodal officer in the Ministry of Affairs for Anglo-Indians. Again, Article 338, it demands that there's a provision for a study by the government of India, the situation of Anglo-Indians, and to suggest remedial measures. For the past more than 75 years, the government of India is not bothered. We are given from the Federation memoranda, 3 memoranda to the President of India, the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Minority Affairs, and 1 to the Home Minister. No step so far. Where are the Anglo-Indians? When these provisions are there accommodated in the Constitution of India, we cannot do it. We cannot make them do it. So that is the situation. That's what I'm telling. That at least once in a month, we have to meet. There should be a forum. There should be a center. There should be a headquarters for Anglo-Indians. That's what every community is doing. When you come to Cochin, you can see in Calcutta, the Sindhi Association, the Punjabi Association, the Andhrites Association, they are all formed. Now we say that we have got 3.5 to 4 lakhs Anglo-Indians in India. Mustn't it be reflect in our unity, in our onward progress? So that's what I am put forward before this August body. The relevant question, how to bridge it? So these are my suggestions. Thank you for your patient listening. Once again, I congratulate Mr. Colin Fitzgerald and his team, CAISS team, for organizing this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAISS. And as is his wont, he has spoken very plainly and put forward very important issues, which the community will be, if it doesn't take it forward, there will be nobody to say that they didn't know. Particularly the relationship of the community with the church, the role of the youth, and the relationship of the community with the government of India. These are 3 different aspects calling for attention. Thank you, Dr. CAISS. May I now call Mr. Errol Rosario to talk on topic number 4. Does caring for the weakest link shape family and community? Dr. Rosario is a person of another pillar of the community and has a very long engagement with the community, stepping forward always in ways which benefit the community at large. He studied at St. Xavier's College in Calcutta. He's done a Bachelor of Commerce from Calcutta University. He worked for the Indian Engineering Association before migrating to Australia in the 1970s. In Australia, he got a master's degree in human resource management and held very senior positions in both universities and corporations. Mr. Rosario, the floor is yours. You have 13 plus 2.
Thank you, Professor Monty. Colin Fitzgerald, committee members of CAISS, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I've been a lecturer for a number of years, so I'm going to begin it with asking you a question, as I would do for my students who I'm teaching. When we raise the question or the statement, sometimes it appears to be, am I my brother's keeper? Can you share with me what are your emotions with respect to the person who's asking that question? How do you feel? What do you think he or she, Cain, was feeling at that time? What emotions? The emotion of arrogance, the emotion of disdain, who cares? The emotion of selfishness, it's only about me. The emotion of hostility, how dare you ask me that question? So when we analyze this question of am I my brother's keeper, and those points or those concepts go through our head, we then try to think, all right, take a step back and let's look at myself. How do I engage if I see somebody who's in a situation that needs assistance in today's society? How do we feel? Or what does society feel? In the 21st century, the phenomenon would go as one of, with the general public, would be one of possibly self-interest. I'm interested in myself, and there's a degree of indifference when it comes to looking at people who might need attention, but I'm on with my own work and my own life. There's a degree of apathy in the community. There's also a deprecation towards others who are experiencing disadvantage or hardship. There's a Chinese saying that has a profound meaning to the question that we're talking about. And this addresses the heart of the issue. The saying goes like this: if there needs to be peace, if there needs to be peace among nations, then there needs to be peace between cities. If there needs to be peace between cities, then there needs to be peace between neighbors. If there needs to be peace between neighbors, then there needs to be peace in the house. If there needs to be peace in the house, then there needs to be peace in the heart. Today, when we discuss this question, am I my brother's keeper? We're talking about the need for peace in the heart. one person, an angel, who had peace and realized peace in her heart was Philomena Eaton, the person who founded and established CAISS. She had her own career. She was a celebrated secretary. She won the Secretary of the Year award in India. So she had her own trail to blaze, but she looked around her and found her own people suffering hardship, disadvantage, and deprivation. And she had peace in her heart in the way she founded CAISS and the infrastructure that she put together to enable this organization to do the work that it's currently doing. So CAISS, and I won't talk more about Philomena because you all know about her, and there are other speakers who will. But what I'm saying is that CAISS and other organizations like it, doing this type of work, bring us some home truths that each one of us bears a personal responsibility for the well-being of others. And that's the topic that I've been given to talk to you about. The topic about individuals taking responsibilities to one another. We are called upon to provide empathy, support, love, even if it means challenging our own personal comfort. We're asked and challenged to get away from our comfort zone because we love living. I am one of them. Love living in that comfort zone, but we're challenged to get away from that comfort zone because somebody else needs attention. Somebody else has needs that demand attention. So I'm asked in this topic to identify the weakest link, probably in a community or in a family. And the question is, when we identify who the weakest link is and then address that link, assist that link, we can develop social structures upon which that structure can build. I sometimes wonder about the question because the weakest link in a family could be at different levels. It might not be one. It might be a situation of the parents or the elders being old, infirm, financially challenged. It might be an issue about the younger people being exposed to peer pressure and social pressures, which as a result take them away in the wrong direction. It could be the fact that young people might not have the wherewithal in terms of support to be able to address the challenges that are confronting them or ahead of them. So to me, that question about a weakest link in one unit is it might be a misnomer because there might be several challenges confronting a unit at different levels. So what I'm mentioning or stating is that in a family, you might have financial constraints, you might have sickness, you might have aging issues, and therefore the question is, how do we address the needs and what do we do to enable them to compete or to at least have their head above water, so to speak. I once had the privilege of sitting at a CAISS. It wasn't even a meeting. I just dropped in one day at CAISS, and I sat there and I saw a table with about 7 or 8 young people. All of them, each of them had sheets of paper. And I asked, I think it was Colin and Yvonne and Jesse were there, and I asked them, what are they doing? And they said, those 8 kids are actually writing and applications to get scholarships into some of the organizations here. And I said, so what happens then? They said, no, in their own words, we've told them, you write and you explain why you deserve a scholarship. So it's interesting. So they wrote them and then they raised that. And I asked 1 or 2 of them to read. Some of them more than 1 or 2, but they were very different. Each one was different. One wrote that they were requesting a scholarship because he or she, I can't remember, had issues within the home that their parents did not have the financial wherewithal, of course, to support them. Another mentioned the scholarship would help him or her to forge their own careers and their own education. And they wanted it because they were keen to study further. Another mentioned that it would help them to get away from the environment in which they were living to get a better life. So each one of them wrote their application from an entirely different angle. And that's the reason why I say it's very difficult for us to say, let's identify a weakest link, because there are different circumstances that influence the way people react and how we in turn need to be mindful and non-judgmental to be able to assist, synchronize our efforts with their motivations. So I would like to consider or ask the organization to consider the fact that in helping young people now in their education, and Robin very eloquently put forward some of the responses of young people who have been supported by CAISS and what they're achieving and what this has done for them. I'd like to CAISS to consider perhaps establishing some sort of an alumni so that these young people who are supported today, who go through even a tertiary or further education, that they can come together and give back something to the community through a united plan, some type of an alumni where they meet, they engage, they talk about their own experiences, they talk about how they've been supported, but in return, they then come together on their own and say, this is what we can do for other people, other young people who are traveling in similar waters that we traveled some time ago. I was very impressed with the hymn that was sung yesterday, which said, "Seek out the lonely, tired and worn. Take your candle, go light the world." And I think the issue then is for us to make sure that we enable people to get the candle, light the candle, and then go out and seek the world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Professor Rosario, for a wonderful presentation. He brought together three very important elements which should guide our conversation. The question of leadership and how you define it. The fact that as a leader, one must care. Caring in leadership is what sets out leadership in community. And finally, he drew our attention to the fact that we are not one mass of people. We are each individuals seeking our own path. As the service organization, we must remember the first and the second. Thank you, Professor Rosario, for pointing that out to us. The next speaker is another very eminent pillar of the community, Mr. Michael Shane Calvert, who will speak on shifting from resentment to responsibility. Mr. Calvert is the Vice Chair of West Bengal Minorities Commission since July 2017. He served as the nominated member of the West Bengal Assembly with over 35 years of experience in the field of education, including 20 years in school administration. He successfully managed schools such as Welland Goldsmith schools and La Martiniere schools in Kolkata. So he's walked the talk. Mr. Calvert.
To DICE, Dr. Devraj, Colin, and my dear friends. At the outset, I think I must say that I must have done something right in my life because I have before me Dr. Devraj Fernandez, who was a student of mine. If I was an enabler to somebody becoming a priest, then obviously I've done something right. And it's not just Dr. Devraj, but two other students of mine, both from Kharagpur, have also become priests. So somebody up there has seen something good about me. So that's a nice thought. And the other thing that struck me today is that we've got a very rich audience because each of you has paid for 2 seats. And so those who would have wanted to come have not because it's houseful now, according to them. But I would like to congratulate CAISS for the 50 years of commitment, for the 50 years of service to the community. It's been an unwavering commitment for over these 5 decades. And that itself is very encouraging. And I'm sure the organization will continue to strive for another 50 years and beyond. You know, the story of Cain and Abel, as we've been told about it, is often remembered as a story of jealousy and violence. But at its heart, it is really about unmanaged resentment and refused responsibility. Cain is warned. He is given a moment to reflect. Yet instead of taking responsibility for his emotions and for his relationship with his brother, he allows this resentment within him to control his actions with, of course, consequences. Now that warning speaks very, very powerfully to a community like ours, a very small community, but a vibrant one. The Anglo-Indian community has always been defined by responsibility. Historically, we were a bridge community between cultures, systems, institutions. The Anglo-Indians have always been the backbone of the railways, not merely as employees, but as custodians of safety, discipline, and continuity. Railway colonies around the country were very close knit spaces where everyone knew their neighbor, and mutual care was not optional, it was survival. So, similarly, Anglo Indian contributions to education, and I stress to education, has shaped generations. Generations, our schools are often founded by missionaries and, of course, Anglo Indians. They were sustained by Anglo Indian leadership. Sustained by Anglo Indian leadership became centers of excellence, discipline, and moral formation. Teachers, principals, headmasters, wardens carried immense responsibility, often with limited resources but unwavering commitment. Where are the Anglo Indians running our institutions today? And the question we need to ask ourselves is, why is it that there are so many Anglo Indian institutions in our country which are not being run by Anglo Indians? And those were not roles driven by resentment, but by duty. Post-independence was marked a turning point in Anglo-Indian history as political structures changed. Many Anglo-Indians felt uncertain about their future. Some migrated to the UK, Canada, Australia, and of course beyond, seeking stability and opportunity. Others, of course, stayed behind, choosing to preserve institutions at home. And I ask this question again. Are we able to preserve the very institutions that we founded? And ask ourselves, why is it that we are not able to preserve them? Now, this divergence, while understandable, also created unspoken resentments between those who left and those who remained, between those who inherited institutions and those who watched from afar. Stories of loss of jobs in the railways, of influence in the schools, numbers in parliament, which Dr. Charles has just mentioned. All this has become part of our collective memory. And like Cain, unresolved disappointment quietly turned into bitterness when responsibility for healing was deferred. Now, today, the Anglo-Indian community is small and deeply interconnected. Old families, railway families, school networks, church circles, alumni associations, they still overlap. And in such a space, resentment does not disappear, it keeps circulating. Now, we see this in disputes over school governance and appointments. And I hope you know what I'm talking about in school governance and appointments. All our schools are losing the concentration, losing the ability to control the schools. No longer are they able to control these schools, and we know why. There is distrust in leadership in associations. Many of our associations, and I'm even talking about our own Anglo-Indian, groups and associations, where There is so much of distrust, and that is the reason why we have probably more, as Dr. Charles mentioned, more associations within the Anglo-Indian community than the number of Anglo-Indians in our community. So this distrust, generational divides, where younger Anglo-Indians feel excluded and elders feel disrespected. And Dr. Dyer spoke about how we need to provide the youngsters with opportunities. We need to provide them the space to grow and mature and take on these leadership roles. That is our responsibility. I'm not saying we belong to the century-year-old category. We're still getting there, but we need to be able to provide the youngsters. And you'll see a young lady who'll come up here. I've seen her over a period of time, over a number of years, and she definitely is somebody to look up for because she's got it in her, the skill, the leadership quality. And then we've got another lady at the back who's doing wonders as well. She's just written a book about ghosts. Okay. Tensions between local communities and the global diaspora. Now, historically, Anglo-Indians survived because responsibility outweighed grievance. When resentment replaces that ethic, the community weakens from within. So the question that we need to ask, what does it take, especially for our leaders, to make that shift from resentment to responsibility? First, historical honesty, acknowledging both the privileges that we enjoyed and the losses of our past without romanticizing or resenting either. Second, emotional maturity. Cain was angry, but he never examined why he was angry. Leaders must learn to name disappointment without weaponizing it. And that is so rampant today in our community. Third, servant leadership, not in a servant way, not in a servile way, but a value deeply embedded in Anglo-Indian tradition, from railway supervisors ensuring safety to headmasters and principals and teachers, shaping character. Leadership was all about stewardship, remember, not status. And the fourth, a transparent, fair system. Our institutions once thrived, past tense. Our institutions once thrived because rules were clear and trust was earned. Without transparency, resentment finds very, very fertile ground. Now, as Anglo-Indians, our responsibilities are inherited to safeguard our schools that educated not just our children, but the nation's, to honor the railway legacy of discipline, reliability, and service, to bridge the gap between those who stayed and those who migrated, and to mentor younger generations so the community does not fade quietly. Responsibility also means recognizing that survival today depends on unity. Cain asked, "Am I my brother's keeper?" For a community of our size, the answer cannot be anything but yes. Much time do I have there? 2 minutes. Colin, there's definitely some miscommunication because Colin had informed me that it's 15 into 3. And I'm now told it's just 15. All right, I'll give you a little grace, okay? He says 13 plus 2. I'll discount the 2 for each 15 minutes. Okay, if that's okay with you all. We may be a small community in this big city, but Kolkata knows us by our schools, our churches, our food, our ability to make any place feel like home. You know, our churches have been, particularly in Calcutta, the heart of Anglo-Indian community life. Institutions such as St. Thomas's Church, St. Paul's Cathedral, St. James Church, St. John, Sacred Heart, Christ the King, St. Mary's, were not only places of worship, but centers of social connection. Sunday service, choirs, Christmas pageants, parish socials brought families together across generations. That's what the churches did. Schools in Kolkata, Anglo-Indian schools, they played an exceptional role in preserving the identity and opportunity. I can't say that it still exists or it's happening anymore, but that's again past. Schools such as St. Thomas's Boys and Girls, the Martini for Boys and Girls, St. James, Loreto, St. Mary's, Frank Anthony Public School, Welland Goldsmith School, Don Bosco, St. Xavier, and many others, of course, English medium institutions, they inculcated and taught discipline and strong extracurricular traditions. These schools prepared Anglo-Indian students for employment and, of course, employment in different sectors, and instilled confidence, leadership, music, sport, public speaking. These are all hallmarks of our community. Associations, they were nerve centers of Anglo-Indian political and social advocacy, with strong roots in the city. The Anglo-Indian Association ensured, to whatever extent, representation at the various levels. Today, we do not have any more representation, which is very unfortunate. I mean, where did the government get that magic figure from? Is something that nobody has an answer to. Clubs, the Calcutta Rangers Club, my God, just give me that little extra time. My wife is not here, otherwise she will be dragging me off the stage. Okay, give me 2 more minutes. Thank you. The Calcutta Rangers Club, Barracks, Dalhousie Institute, an old school boys and girls network, all these, they provide the safe environment for sport, music, dance, social gatherings. These clubs preserve customs, humor, and camaraderie. And organizations is the last thing that I need to talk about. Otherwise, Colin will never ever invite me to a CAISS program ever again. Welfare and charitable organizations in Kolkata played a crucial role in supporting those who stayed behind. Housing support in areas such as Bow Barracks, Park Circus, and Barrackport, educational trusts, etc. Organizations, they all acted as bridges to the diaspora, maintaining ties with Anglo-Indians who migrated to the UK, migrated abroad, Australia, Canada, etc., while continuing to support local needs. And CAISS, in the midst of this all, has been a pillar of care and continuity. It has played a critical and compassionate role in the survival of the Anglo-Indian community in Kolkata, particularly in the decades following independence, when large-scale migration left many families fragmented and vulnerable. At a time when traditional support systems weakened, CAISS stepped in to provide practical assistance where it mattered most. Support for the elderly, widows, single individuals, and those facing economic hardship. Its work has included medical assistance, counseling, educational support, housing-related help, and emergency relief, and ensuring that the community members were not left isolated or invisible. More than a welfare organization, CAISS has embodied the Anglo-Indian values of responsibility, service, and community care. Its work has often been discreet, consistent, and deeply personal, helping individuals live with dignity rather than dependence. In doing so, CAISS has helped maintain the social fabric of the community at a time of profound transition. Congratulations to CAISS, and thank you for giving me those extra few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert, and those extra 2 minutes were certainly worth it. Again, Mr. Calvert drew our attention to another facet of leadership, which we don't always think about, which is organizational leadership. And organizational leadership is not simply a summation of individual leaders. An organization must define for itself what it wants to achieve and how it will get there, and must not rest on laurels. He talked about church and its association, so that Dr. CAISS. You have to take both these facets into account as we think of the way forward. So the last speaker for today is Maria Fitzgerald. And Maria is going to speak on the week begins with you. And Maria is a role model. She is years younger than most of the people who preceded. And that's precisely why she is a role model. All right? For everybody sitting over here of a certain age, who are thinking of what to do, you couldn't do better than do what Maria does. So just very quickly to introduce Maria. Maria has been actively engaged with CAISS activities since 2013. As a graduate student, she served on the CAISS steering committee. She presently works at the Ashoka University in Sonipat, and she is a PhD from the Delhi School of Economics in Delhi University. Maria, 13.
It's very cool when a Professor M introduces a Dr. M. So thank you so much for that introduction, sir. Dolores's work has also been very instrumental in shaping my research trajectory with the community in India. Here is a very special place to be for me because it's CAISS, definitely, and I also had the privilege and the opportunity of meeting every single other panelist before I came up. It's either been at some research workshop, or I've troubled them with questions for my own research, or it's been at the reunion where I met Uncle Aaron. So this is why this place is special. As I share reflections, notes, and excerpts from my research interview with young people, I will be shifting between two positions, okay? I'll be speaking to you as a young Anglo-Indian who was in the prime of her youth, not so long ago, and I will also be speaking to you as a person that has been primed. Not so primed, but primed. As part of the panel, I was asked to respond to 3 questions which are in the booklet. So what I'll be doing is I'll be sharing an excerpt by a young Anglo-Indian, and from there I'll be offering some reflections on it. So the first one, is there a shared sense of ownership to the community among young Anglo-Indians? So while interviewing young Anglo-Indians as part of my MPhil research, one of them remarked to me and said, "It's only a few of us at youth meetings, mostly only the youth committee members." My next obvious question to them was, "Why is it like that?" And the person said something like this: "Because somebody needs to make them aware of it. I mean, you can just wake up and say that today you are going to work for the community. I don't think you can do that. I mean that there has to be an initial seed that has to be sown, then only the plant can grow." As someone who has been working for and with CAISS since 2013, let me tell you that CAISS planted that seed when they started 50 years ago. The writers of the Constitution had enough foresight to realize the need for young people to be involved not just as volunteers for society events or part of subcommittees, but in a decision-making capacity. And this aspect becomes very clear because if you look at the structure of the steering committee of CAISS, they have space in terms of the provision for a young person to be co-opted onto the steering committee as a youth coordinator if there isn't already a young person who has nominated themselves as a member of the steering committee. The practice and the effort to involve young people and their voices preceded the recent practices of youth meets and conventions that have gained a lot of momentum in the last 5 years. I'm wondering if other associations and organizations can follow a similar practice of making space for young people at the big table where the grown-ups and the seniors sit down. Because it's important to always ensure that youth have a shared sense of ownership and belonging. It's very easy to talk about young people in rooms when they are not there. Speak of how much they must shoulder the responsibility of taking the community forward without being accountable ourselves as adults. Identify them as groups and as subcommittees so that it checks off the need to have a youth representation, which shows that young people are very involved in community activities. I'll give you an example. So, at the recent reunion in Cochin, there was the AGM of the International Federation, and after the discussions were over, there was somebody who got up and asked, or mentioned rather, this remark that there should be a position created specifically for a young person on the committee, the International Federation body. And when I heard that, I felt super excited because it would mean adding a young space there. But at the end of the day, I think before we put somebody at an international stage, we need to work like how CAISS did from the ground up. Organizations that are part of the International Federation need to first and should put young people on their subcommittees, their committees first. Not subcommittees, not create another group, but put them at the big table where you have the rest of the adults sitting there and listen to what they have to say. Because believe me, they will tell you very hard truths and you may not like to listen to them, but you need to if you are serious about talking about the future of the community. So as a community, we can't only call on the youth when it suits us. We need to plant a seed and nurture the plant if we want that seed to grow. In other words, the shared sense of ownership and belonging needs to be cultivated, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be mentored. You have to give them time. The we as a community begins with you as a person. Coming to my second point, is there a gap in relating to being Anglo-Indian in the present day context? I will share another excerpt from an interview with a young Anglo-Indian. I'm letting you know it's a little hard-hitting. See, we don't want someone who's in politics, okay, to secure our needs. He shouldn't be like this fighting for Anglo-Indians. We don't need a freedom fighter. We just want someone like who will bring out exactly what an Anglo-Indian is, even though it's written down in the constitution and everything, how it is defined as an Anglo-Indian but. We just need someone who will, like you, explain everything to everyone, make someone understand, because there are still many people who have not understood what an Anglo-Indian is, and they accept us as foreigners who shouldn't be here. Reflecting on this quote as a young Anglo-Indian, it's very evident the history of our community for a young person, not just me, but a couple of others who I interacted with, is what is essentially passed down from nanas, dadas, mums, dads, their experiences and what they introduced us to. It's not a history that's been learned from history books, but stories shared with us, which give us a fair idea of how to correspond, how we should be as Anglo-Indians. But it isn't enough to know how to respond to uncomfortable questions or explain our cultural identity to people. If not the stories from the family, then it's our own experiences when we have heard someone call us something unpleasant in school, or that teacher's remark which said, "You Anglo-Indians don't study, you only know how to shake your backsides." It is also the stereotypes of the community created through actions of the previous generations that we have a difficulty of dealing with, or that we first have to break down to build up our own selves of being Anglo-Indian. Anglo-Indian schools are seedbeds, and initiatives need to be taken to sensitize young Anglo-Indians about their culture or others in the school about Anglo-Indian culture. So there was another incident that happened at Cochin where we had a roundtable discussion on Anglo-Indian education. And the mic was passed around and said, what are your expectations from the panelists? And out of the blue, I just asked, I said, I just want to know whether any initiatives are being taken by Anglo-Indian schools to sensitize young people to their culture or others to Anglo-Indian culture, because the school is the most, I think, is the first place for many of us where we come to know our identity, because we're made to fill in the diary slip, and I know that still happens. Maybe the young people here can tell me the diary slip of what community or what religion you belong to and things like that. And we don't know what to fill in that blank space. I didn't know what to fill in at some point. And so the first awareness of being an Anglo-Indian comes there. So that's why we need to kind of make an effort. So I asked the person, I said, are any initiatives being taken for this? And the discussion proceeded and everything went off well, people clapped, everything was over. I still didn't get an answer. And when after lunch, I was still not satisfied. I was a little gutsy. I took my lunch plate and I went up to a person and I said, hey, I asked a question in the beginning, I didn't get an answer. The person told me, you're not going to get an answer because nothing's been done. Yes, we are the only community to be defined in the Indian Constitution. We are the only community with the word India in our name. And young Anglo-Indian people, I think, best personify this by speaking vernacular languages, dressing at times in an atypical Anglo-Indian style. But are we as a community ready to accept that our mother tongue is not just English anymore? Our food includes much more than meatball curry and yellow rice, and extends to regional varieties. We enjoyed a lot of appam and beef stew in Cochin. And we also need to support and care for persons who are born, young people who are born to Anglo-Indian mothers, and not exclude them just because the community traces a patrilineage. In other words, yes, there is a gap in knowing who we are and how we choose to self-identify or identify ourselves as Anglo-Indians. The next last question. If there's a gap, how do we bridge it? Brings me to an interesting quote on responsibility, again, said by a young person who I interviewed. Responsibility means if we want to blame, we can blame seniors. But that's not the thing. The youth also have to take on initiatives to adjust with seniors, maybe have to arrange something locally, not locally exactly, but where they are. We have not been given much opportunity to come together and interact. The thing is that we get together, some functions come, we get together, and then we're so happy. We celebrate, we talk to each other, but nothing beneficial about the community is talked or done after we go. We are scattered then to different parts, and we engage in our different affairs. Then the next function comes, everyone will come again, do some chit chat and go. And that's how it goes on. In order to bridge this gap, in order to address questions of responsibility, I think we need to be, or rather we should be, more consistent in our efforts to stay connected with each other. Mr. Errol did mention that in his talk about creating an alumni association or a group. Dr. Charles also did stress about it when he addressed also all of us. But what I want to add on to that is that we need to stay connected with each other across generations, across places, and across nationalities. We need to meet for chai, we need to meet for adda, and we need to have more conversations, not just wait for another 50th anniversary or a celebration of Christmas or Easter or Valentine's Day, but we need to meet more often just to talk. And also another important point which perhaps could help bridge is a mentoring program. If we could start something where we are able to mentor young people with a lot of patience, with a lot of time, and with a lot of care, I think it would make a difference. To the young people in this room, you are way more than what Article 366(2) defines you to be as an Anglo-Indian. Your Anglo-Indianness does not solely depend on what you choose to wear, eat, or the language you speak at home. It is much more than whether you can jive or do the line dance. I can't do either. You are more than your teacher's remark of being an Anglo-Indian in school or the names you've been called throughout your life. You determine what being Anglo-Indian is. You define what the future of the community will be. The we as a community always, always begins with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Everything I expected, I got. For posing tough questions, and the most important, perhaps, is to say that people of my age should learn to listen to people of courage. There was a point of time when I used to pride myself that I will not be like my father. There will be no generation gap. Today at 65, I stand in front of you to say there is a generation gap. I don't know how her generation thinks, how she thinks, or the one after. Therefore, unless there is a respectful dialogue where we take on the hopes and anxieties of our young, there are many ideas that come forward. Before I say anything, may I request Mr. Godmar to come and address, finally to come and to remember, after that, we'll throw it over the floor.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the best of health. So the one thing when Anglo-Indians left India, they had a quest to do better. And I tell you what, constitutionally, they haven't. Because half our contingent at the hotel is sick. Well, all the Indians are actually thriving. The Anglo-Indians in India are thriving and we are struggling. Now, I haven't heard all the speakers because the taxi I caught took me around for an hour and 45 minutes. He couldn't find the place. He tried to drop me off in 4 locations that weren't correct, and I wasn't getting out of the cab. I said, no, you got to keep driving until you find the place. So anyway, I congratulate Colin for organizing something like this, because as Maria has pointed out, we tend to concentrate the Anglo-Indian culture. We tend to concentrate more on the social side of our lives. And when you call for serious discussions like this, quite often you won't find a lot of people attend. And those that attend are actually attending through a sense of loyalty or a sense of duty. And so it's good to see that the people here are really interested in the future of our community. Now, what happens is that when you are in India, Anglo-Indians get desensitized about the poverty of other people. You may not feel that, but it's true. If you sit around and you live around a certain condition, you get desensitized after some time. And so, some of you might know we ran a little lunch the day before yesterday for 50 poor Anglo-Indians, okay, at the Berkmeyer Hostel. And I invited 50 other people that paid the cost price so that they would come there and just experience the joy and the appreciation that came from these 50 poorer Anglo-Indians, right? And it's remarkable uh, of the reaction and offerings definition of an Anglo-Indian. Because staying in the constitution means nothing anymore since we don't have representation in the Lok Sabha or government departments. So it means nothing. It's who we decide are Anglo-Indians, who we decide should be classed as Anglo-Indians. And as she pointed out, it's a patriarchal system, so you have to have a male on your, at least your father's side, you had to have lineage from there. And without that, naturally, you didn't carry an English or when you see the community doing well, and I know some people are very sensitive, when you see the community doing well, and I know some people are very sensitive to the fact that when we send money into India to help certain groups, there are certain members of our community here in India that don't like that. They feel like we're being patronizing other organizations in India. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm not too well myself, so it's the reason why I haven't taken on this role of moderating. So thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maher, for those words of encouragement. By clock, we want 15 minutes of or maybe the most appropriate to say it. But please to remember that we keep it as short so that we can get as many voices heard. But before I keep it talking, let me also say that in the 50 years, which CAISS has been an effective organization and shown organization defining care, India has changed. And India has changed in good ways and bad ways.
Today. I learned a lot. It takes time. I know that at coaching, I have the provisional hypothesis that I bring to. The Anglican history is not, there's no material evidence of it being taught at schools. If you want to catch them young, you cannot ignore that, please. Now, I do understand that it's a bit much for me to just chime in here and make that claim, but I am making it. I'm standing by it. And so, whilst we have culture, we've always had culture, it is not a substitute for history, especially for young people. And I know you've done a very, very good job in being resilient. And you've played the game. Your social capital is awesome. But your historical knowledge for young people who need to debate in the public forum has yet to be improved. You must teach the children at school level. There's no negotiation there. I do understand that it's very easy for me to come from a democracy that's more democratic in some ways. And then there are issues over here. I do realize that. But I've tried to be deft in the book. I've actually banned the word convert. It's a trigger word. And I've used words like embrace. Catholicism is part of our history. We're not going to deny it. There's too much material evidence for one thing. But you don't have to be triumphal about it. That's when you get into trouble. There are other facts. I mean, the book's not only about Catholicism, it's our history.
I deeply appreciate the focus of today has been the plight of poorer members of the Anglo-Indian community in India, as well as the educational emphasis on the youth of the community in India. But of course, we've come as sort of international delegates connected through charitable donations from the diaspora to India. So maybe it's also worth just thinking a little bit about the youth in the diaspora as well. So we had a conversation in Kochi at the AGM, and Gordon Maha, the president of the International Federation, expressed that the fear that essentially his generation in the diaspora will be the last generation, and that has an impact on sense of youth engagement and to connect Anglo-Indians who have children and grandchildren who who are also finding themselves more connected, as Gordon would say, with being Australian, with being British. But it is possible that Keith's graphic novel can help connect Anglo-Indian youth and Anglo-Indian descended youth in the diaspora with a continuing identification with India and a continuing ability to be engaged with organizations like CAISS. So even if, as the fear is, that's a lost cause and there will be only one or two generations of connection, of feeling some Anglo-Indian identity amongst youth in the diaspora, still, even if it's a lost cause ultimately, it's a cause that's worth fighting for as long as possible. And a lot of the causes that the Anglo-Indian community have been fighting in India have also, at times, felt like a lost cause that was worth fighting. The loss of the nominated seats falls into that category. So we had the conversation in previous reunions in India about the unfairness of this paternal constitutional definition. And at the time, I had to say to people, unfortunately, of course, I agree with you in principle, but unfortunately it's a conversation we can't have, because the minute this is touched, the minute it is looked at by government, they will be gone. And unfortunately that turned out to be the case, that now they are gone. And I and Dolores Chu and Robin Andrews, we all wrote a letter to the Hindu, making the case, and of course Colin has also expressed at our meetings in Kochi all of the complicated politics about why a census was not conducted and how that ultimately was self-sabotaging for the community. So there's a lot of issues there. And what I suggested to Gordon Maha at our AGM of the National Federation was that there should be, what we see in India is that there is very effective building up of youth engagement relative to the ability of the diaspora to engage Anglo-Indian descended youth. So I think that on the committee of the International Federation, there should be a position which might realistically actually be held by an older person in the initial stage, because we don't have these youth committees, we don't have lots of engaged youth in comparison with the community in India. It would be very worthwhile if a generation of the children of the Anglo-Indian leaders in the diaspora could pass on the torch. So I think it's we try and also engage the Anglo-Indian descended youth in the diaspora and hope that these organizations which sustain the International Federation, all of the associations in Britain, in Australia, can continue at least for another generation. So I think that's a very significant goal, which is in the interests of Anglo-Indians worldwide and in India. And what I will say is that the organizations in the UK have been more or less moribund for a long time. But fairly recently, since COVID, a new Anglo-Indian club in Croydon has been resurrected, revivified. It's not a political association, so it doesn't naturally incline towards joining the International Federation. But I'll say I've been to several Anglo-Indian events in the last year, and I was very impressed that suddenly, from having institutions in the UK which were almost dead, almost no engagement. My father's only engagement with community matters was through his alumni organization of his school from Bangalore. But in Croydon, at one of the schools, we had a huge Anglo-Indian Day celebration, and it was massively attended by Anglo-Indian descended children and also by children from other communities who were appreciating the Anglo-Indian culture in Croydon. So I hope that that's also a path forward to keep the youth in the diaspora connected, and if they can be, and if the history of the community in serious, weighty tomes like my book, Anglo-Indian, The End of Empire, available on Amazon, and Keith's graphic novel, that is a way to try and keep the Anglo-Indian spirit alive in the diaspora as well. And I think that will be helpful to the work the very worthwhile work that CAISS continues to do. Thank you.
So we're coming to closing time. 1:30 before I hand over the back to Colin. I took it. And I say that what Utha just said is very important to keep in mind. But again, it's listening to young people. Very often, we don't listen ourselves, and therefore we don't teach our children how to listen either. But listening is the hardest thing to do. We can do
it as individuals, we can do it as an organization, we can take it forward. The fact that we can take it forward is 15 years of CAISS history. It will sustain, it will grow. And in its growth and sustaining it, it will become more. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is actually overwhelming because I didn't realize what we put on paper would engage so much emotion in this room. I think there are people across the diaspora, in Calcutta, in Australia, in the UK, in the US, in Canada. But the emotion of being Anglo-Indian and talking about our community with all the passion we have in us still remains. I knew this discussion was going to start off people talking about things, but I didn't realize that it was going to leave back for us here at CAISS such a lot of homework. Because each one of the speakers today, in their passion to speak on the community, have actually left back million ideas which can actually be fostered and taken forward. Our young people are no doubt the center of all of this discussion. And in keeping them as the center, we do need to focus our attentions on whatever we can do, we need to do it now. I think we've allowed a lot of time and a lot of water to flow under the bridge before we've started taking steps forward. In our appeal as CAISS, as an organization, we've heard from people who've been associated with us that we did it and we started doing it. But it has to come from across all the organizations. We have to come to some common ground to be able to take all of this and make it effective. And therefore, I know when I started out with this discussion and putting things down on paper, of course, Maria did part of the editing of this, writing of these points, but I didn't realize that we would start something so emotional. And I trust that each one of us that are sitting in this room are here not by chance, but because we wanted to be here. And I'm grateful to all of you who have spoken today and have been part of this panel. As Mr. Calvert said, not just 2 seats, it's probably 3. Thank you so much to each one of you. We have a small token of our appreciation which we do need to give. And I'll ask the young people, Kesha, please come up so that we can say thank you to all of the speakers who've spoken today and who've left one common thread for us to hold on to, our young people. So could you first start with Father Devraj Fernandez for his open and all that he said for being who we are and what we need to do. Father Devraj. Please face that way. Yeah. Nelson, will you please come here? Come here. I want to introduce you here. Come here. Nelson is member youth on our CAISS committee, and he's the one who's behind young people see here. Nelson, will you do the next honors? Dr. Charles Dias is here. Mr. Shane Calvert. A photograph. They didn't get a photograph. Nelson, will you please come? They didn't get a photograph of Dr. Charles. Come this side. Mr. Shane Calvert, our ex-MLA, somebody who's been always, I don't know if you know, but Mr. Calvert is a life member of CAISS. One of the very few life members we have. He is a life member of CAISS. Thank you so much, sir. Oh. We have Mr. Gordon Maha with us, the President of the International Federation, someone who's live wire for all the activities. Turn the other way, please. Dr. Robin Andrews. Mr. Henry Rosario. Maria Fitzgerald. And I've kept the special honors for the end. Professor Mohanty. You please come. I hope I've not forgotten anybody. No. Thank you so much. This has been a very fruitful discussion. And I would request all the speakers to kindly join us on stage, because I want, these young people want to take a photograph with you. So I request all the speakers to please come on stage, and the young people would like to take a photograph with you.
Before we conclude, one of my duties, while Colin was there in the grand ball, we honored, but there was little commotion during that grand ball. But I forgot that one thing, that behind that 13th International Academic Union held in Cochin, Colin was the one person who designed the brochure, lots of text for the reunion, and always was keen that we discuss most of the days but we couldn't honor Colin during that occasion. I now request Mr. Gordon Mahar to come forward, please. 1 minute. I had to bring it from question to here to give to Colin. Because the answer. So, Gordon Mahar.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I think we've had a very fruitful discussion today. I'm very grateful that Denise and Van is here. Auntie, thank you so much for making time to be here for this discussion. It means a lot. It shows the absolute concern that you have for our community. And I'd request the speakers to kindly come up on stage, because we want the young people to take a photograph. They want to take a photograph with you. So please come up on stage. Jason, can you kindly move the mic and me, please? Nelson, you need to be here. Please come here. Request the speakers to come.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry guys. There is lunch is served downstairs in the refectory. There is a dining hall downstairs just below this. Lunch is served, so please go down and join us for fellowship. We are more than grateful that you're here with us. Please share that meal with us, and we will. For those who are in the hotels, the buses will be with you at 6 o'clock to pick you up for the cruise. The buses will be there at 6 o'clock for the cruise. 5:30. 5:30. Okay, 5:30. 5:30. Yeah, if you're next to Kenilworth, you can go to Kenilworth, not a problem.